Hello, I'm Casey Aiken. This is 21 This Week. Coming up next, who botched the COVID-19 vaccination process in Montgomery County? The contest to replace Larry Hogan as governor just got more interesting. Legislation directed at the minority community gets priority in the Maryland General Assembly. And what will be the consequence from Citizen Donald Trump's impeachment trial? Our panel of insiders will give you the story behind the story. We're joined by Democratic attorney Ron Little and the secretary for the Montgomery County Federation of Republican Women, Laurie Halverson. Stay tuned for these stories and more on the next 21 This Week. A year into the novel coronavirus pandemic, Marylanders are getting frustrated with the deprivations that have been forced upon them. While many focus on the disruptions to their daily lives, the reality is that COVID-19 has taken the lives of loved ones and friends, has destroyed businesses, has negatively impacted our children's education, and changed our lives forever. We talk about how the Great Depression of the early 20th century impacted the generations that lived through that time period. And we should wonder what will be the impact on the COVID generation. But here and now, we need to focus on how efficiently government has handled the rollout and distribution of the life-saving vaccines, which were developed in record time. Ron, the governor calls for the reopening of schools in March, but the county and the teachers union push back, saying that it's still not safe until there's more vaccination, which goes to the fundamental question of how well is government handling the distribution of the vaccine?
Well, I think part of the problem is that we haven't seen a clear agenda, whether it's from the federal government, the state government, or the local government, in terms of how these vaccines will be distributed. We don't typically count teachers as frontline workers, those who would necessarily need to be vaccinated in order to continue to do their job. There's also the concern about kids being in environments that might not necessarily be as secure as necessary in order to prevent exposure and spreading. We already have disparities in school systems from county to county. I don't know how we're going to manage to put these instruments in place to make sure that we insulate our kids in a school environment from the possibility of catching the COVID virus or having a teacher spread it, or not necessarily knowing what environment these kids are coming from when they bring themselves to school every day and subject their classmates to whatever it is they have going on outside the classroom.
But isn't the fear greater than the reality? I mean, we've had private schools and parochial schools open for the past 8 months or 7 months, and they've seemed to be able to manage and come up with a process to handle it. They're part-time. So isn't it the fear of the unknown as opposed to the reality that we're concerned about? And Laurie, I want to come to you on this because, this week, one Loudoun County parent meltdown at a Board of Education meeting became a YouTube sensation. And this guy felt that schools should reopen. And it's highlighted by a fact that there was a CDC report that concluded there's little evidence of widespread coronavirus transmission in schools. And as Ron said, when proper precautions are followed. So is Governor Hogan correct? Is it time to open the schools?
It's past time to open the schools. Governor Hogan made an announcement about how we need to do this, and it really upset the teachers union. The president of the teachers union at the state level, Shara Bost, she wrote a scathing letter in response to Hogan's announcement, saying that there's just not enough protection, that she wants all the teachers to have the immunization first. She wants HVAC to be improved in all the schools and a lot of other things. And, we can't have a perfect world for the teachers. Unfortunately, we'd like to do that, but we have to get our teachers back in the schools. And the state is helping. The governor did announce that there would be sufficient PPE to all the schools, so they don't have to worry about the cost of that now. So that's taken care of. Parents are still frightened. There are a number of parents who are really afraid to have their child go back into the classroom. And a lot of that, I think, is driven by the negative press that this whole pandemic is getting. There is evidence that shows that it does not spread as much as community-wide spread. It is a much lower rate of risk. And if we have our grocery store workers and, everywhere, the gas stations, we have a lot of people working right now. Why not have our teachers go back? It is a risk, and some teachers shouldn't be back in the classroom because of their, comorbidity rates, but you've got to get the kids back in school.
So Ron, I want to go back to you and pick up on a point that you said. I mean, there are disparities in our schools in the education that our children are receiving. Doesn't this further highlight that disparities? If people can afford going to private schools, their children not only are getting educational benefit, but socialization benefit. And the young people that are going to public schools are being denied both.
I don't necessarily think that they're being denied both. I mean, here's what the issue is. We can discuss situations that maybe not as stringent from place to place, whether, one parochial school has taken a set of steps that another parochial school has decided doesn't work for them. Those school systems have the resources to exercise those means. Our public school system is not built that way. We're relying on public funds to make everything equitable for everyone so that when they do attend these institutions, that it's a safe and healthy environment for them to work in. And from my point of view and the point of view of many other people, any amount of risk is too much risk if it's unnecessary.
Well, that seems to be, the debatable point, which is how much risk is acceptable. We got to go on to our next topic, and that is, when is it too soon to think about the next election? Well, for most politicians, it's never too soon. For months, maybe years, the conventional wisdom has been that Comptroller Peter Franchot was the front runner to replace Governor Larry Hogan as the Democratic Party nominee. Laurie, in addition to Franchot, the most speculated name was Prince George's County Executive Angela Alsobrook. But now a new contender is on the horizon. Former Montgomery County Council member and Democratic National Committee Chair Tom Perez is considering a run that will change the dynamics of things in a hurry, won't it?
Yes, Tom Perez definitely has a national, he was serving under the Obama administration as the Secretary of Labor from 2013 to 2017. He was a big, he made a big mark in Montgomery County. It's been a while, but he was on the county council. He was president of the county council. But I think one of the negative things about Tom Perez, which was a positive at one point, but he was the board president of CASA. And he might, wish, if he's going to run for governor, he might wish that Trump won because I think that with all of the new people coming into Montgomery County, all the illegal immigrants that will be coming here, or maybe they won't be illegal anymore, maybe they'll actually have a path to citizenship, which, that would be nice if they could actually be citizens. If there's a good path toward that. But, we're going to have a lot more people coming into our county, drowning out the jobs that we need right now, that regular citizens need right now. So I don't think that's going to help Tom Perez in the future. I think Peter Franchot he's got the biggest war chest. He's got $2.2 million in his but Perez was chairman of the DNC. He can blink and raise. That's true. He can raise a lot of $2 million. And the beautiful thing about politics is that people have sharp elbows, and they're not willing to step aside for somebody just because they got a name or they got money. But it's going to be fascinating to watch. Hey, Ron, I want to talk about one more race before we have to break, and that race is about the lone congressional Republican Andy Harris. He may face a challenge from former Maryland delegate Heather Majure, who is from Montgomery County. Is it possible that she can win in what has been a solid conservative district represented by Harris?
Look, I think Heather is incredible. I think that she can do just about anything. She had a very good showing during the Democratic primaries for governor. And I think that given Andy Harris's behavior most recently that it is time for people to maybe have someone else to look at, to measure against capability in terms of representation, not just for the Eastern Shore, but Andy Harris is a United States Congressman. He advocates, or is supposed to, not just for the citizenship in his congressional district, but for those in the entire nation. And his behavior the past couple of weeks has made it clear that he's not capable of doing that. Now, as it relates to the governor, when we talk about money and what Peter Franchot has and what Tom Perez might be able to raise, but there are other people, and Neil Jane, people are looking at possibly what the millennials would like to see in the governor's office. There's also the prospect of David Trone and John Delaney, who both have healthy personal finances capable of drowning out anything that anyone has raised to this point. So it is going to be an interesting race, and I can't wait to see it.
Neither can I. It's going to be.
Heather, and she did announce she's running. She is running.
The Democrats tear each other apart during the primary. When we come back from this short break, there's a legislative focus in the House of Delegates, and what's that going to be, and what are the consequences from Citizen Donald Trump's impeachment trial? Stay tuned. Welcome back. This week, House Speaker Adrian Jones unveiled a package of bills aimed at minimizing race-based socioeconomic and health disparities. Some of the proposals include more equitable treatment applying for loans and credit, a program to assist first-time homebuyers afford down payments, several bills designed to assist minority businesses in the state procurement process, and a bill, finally, that would declare racism a public health crisis and require medical professionals to undergo bias training. Ron, governments are often criticized for picking winners and losers. Are the proposals that we just talked about, discussed, reasonable?
Look, I think anything we can do collectively to try to create parity across the board is a reasonable endeavor. I don't know the specifics of each bill that has been proposed, but I think that we do need to consider what it's been like and what it will look like going forward for minority business owners who can't or haven't been able to compete equitably for government contracts, for healthcare systems in underrepresented communities. We've seen during the COVID crisis that this has been a significant drain on our general population as a whole. Same thing with education opportunities, whether it's for college or parochial schools, things that the public trust has been relied upon to provide sources of funds for, but there are segments of the population that have been excluded from actively participating in those endeavors. So I think to the extent that we can create parity, and if there are ways that we should at least consider amending the way we do things, we don't want to function in an old boy network system anymore, which is how we've been operating, for the vast amount of time. We need to have more parity, and someone at least needs to have the discussion about what we can do to make things better.
I think
that's all fair. I think that's what people are looking for, is fairness. Laurie.
Yeah, I think we need to look at the details of these bills. It's very vague right now, what I've seen when Adrian Jones announced the initiatives. It concerns me about that there must be racial diversity by 2023 for certain companies that have like $1 million of state funds. Like that could end up hurting, if small companies that can't hire that many people, and I don't know how that's going to affect their ability to hire the right person for the job. If it ends up getting in the way of hiring the correct, person with the right abilities. So that really concerns me. And we're in the middle of a pandemic. So why is our state focusing a lot on this when really a lot of our focus should be on getting the vaccines distributed? That we are in a huge mess right now on how we're distributing our vaccines. That should be the #1 priority right now.
Well, I was reading the other day in the Washington Post about Bomani Jones, who was a sportscaster for and commentator for ESPN. And he posed this question: what is the biggest impediment to race relations in America? And his answer was that white people not treating black people as being equal levels of humanity. Isn't that what we're really looking for, is that all races treat one another with humanity and dignity?
Of course, yes. That's what we all want. I think on both sides of the aisle, we all agree on that. I think it's how you get there is the difference. And, I do think there are needs in, that you have to do more to lift people who haven't been given the same opportunities as others. There has to be some way to help people, to give them, education is the number one thing, in my opinion, to make sure every child has access to a quality education.
Yeah, but we operate in a society where money governs who has access. And without access to money or the ability to make money, many of these people in these communities are silenced. And if we have to first start looking at what the government is doing, whether it's the state or the federal government, to create parity, at least we can open up some doors that have been historically closed. I don't expect anyone to start removing contracts from small companies that have a limited number of personnel and don't have the ability to invite a more racially diverse workforce into their establishment. But those who do have the capacity should do so.
Okay, thank you, Ron. You got the last word on this. We'll go on to our last topic for the afternoon. The push to impeach and convict President Donald Trump went forward this week, with Maryland Congressman Jamie Raskin named as the manager of the House impeachment effort, even though Donald Trump is now a citizen Trump and is out of office. Ron, when Richard Nixon faced impeachment many, many years ago, his resignation from office ended that effort immediately. Many question the need for a Senate trial, given that Donald Trump is no longer president, and is it fair to try the former president?
Well, the difference right away for me, Richard Nixon was at least willing to accept responsibility for his part in his own demise. Hillary Clinton, during the Benghazi trial, was a citizen at the time the trial was initiated. Donald Trump, from the perspective of many, many citizens in this country, instigated this insurrection that took place on the grounds of the Capitol. Not only did he instigate it, he invited people to come and take back the government that was being stolen from them. The Andy Harrises of the world, the Ted Cruzes, all of the people that have done their part to undermine our democracy should be accountable for their behavior. Donald Trump's bad behavior occurred while he was president. We have laws in this country that allow us to pursue justice even after a lengthy period of time has occurred. Donald Trump shouldn't be excluded. Hillary Clinton wasn't excluded. No one else who was found to be the assailant in a crime 10 years later, depending on the crime, is excluded. Donald Trump is guilty of being not just a bad president, but someone who openly invited trouble on the grounds of the Capitol. And he should answer for that, private citizen or not.
I mean, I understand your point of view, but there is another point of view that says that the challenge that was mounted by President Trump to the elections were all legitimate challenges to questionable election activities, and that was his right. And to complain about whether or not he thought he was fairly treated, I will suggest that Democrats felt, and they campaigned for years, that Hillary Clinton was unjustly treated and cheated out of her winning the election in 2016. So we need to make sure that what we're talking about is comparable and not just rushing to judgment because we don't like the personality of the former president.
And let's look at who's inciting who. 4 years ago, Jamie Raskin was very involved in making sure that a lot of kids in Montgomery County were protesting our newly elected president. And he made the statement that I read in the Sentinel: young people are going to be a very strong counterforce to right-wing reaction in America. He was encouraging young people to protest. And what's different than what President Trump was doing? He was encouraging people to support fair elections. What's wrong with that? If some of the things he said were questionable on how he said it, but he said nothing that deserves an impeachment. This is just, I totally understand Andy Harris's frustration. I think a lot of Americans are behind the way he feels about all of this. It is just totally does not make sense to me why he's being impeached. They're moving the goalpost too. They're changing it from, what he said during the actual day of the, to what he said, for months before that, that led to this event.
Thanks, Laurie. I want to give Ron the opportunity to respond to what we just said.
The Republican caucus has been moving the goalposts to suit their own end throughout the last 4 years. What Donald Trump did, according to Mitch McConnell, was likely an impeachable offense. And we need to investigate whether or not they were. And that's all we're trying to do. Whether or not it'll be successful is something else. But a trial at least needs to be had so that we can have everything out in the public eye for everyone to see so that we can make a proper judgment.
But I will say this, there was no hearing in the House.
Right.
Before the vote to impeach was taken. And normally you have a hearing in the House and the opportunity to present the prosecution as well as the defense, and that wasn't done. And if that's the result of the Senate trial, then that's fine. But I think many look at this as a rush to judgment on the right anyway.
And Jamie Raskin has we got
to wrap, Laurie. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Don't mean to cut you off, but we got to go on. Stay tuned for Parting Shots. Welcome back. Now with Parting Shots, Ron Little.
I just want to take a minute to acknowledge the hard work that's being done by those on the front lines. They've done this for the past year while we as a country struggled to try to find a way to stem the spread of this virus. Hospital workers, policemen, firemen, restaurant workers, supermarket workers, all of these people who've subjected themselves to a risk that most of us normal citizens wouldn't be willing to subject ourselves to. And now we have hope. We have hope with vaccines being available that maybe in the next 6 months, things will return to some degree of normal, and these people will still be expected to do their job while they're waiting for their turn to be vaccinated. So I want to make sure that we never forget that those people are legitimately putting their lives on the line for the rest of us, and we should be thankful and grateful for all of them for everything that they do.
What a wonderful sentiment. Thank you, Ron. Laurie Halverson, your parting shot.
Yes, I just want to say congratulations to all of the 11 new commission that the county council has selected. That is going to be a new redistricting commission because our county council will be growing from 9 members to 11. So new boundaries need to be drawn. And our very own Sam Statlin from 21 This Week was one of the 11 chosen. There were 4 Democrats, 2 Republicans, 1 Libertarian, and the others were unaffiliated or independent. So sounds like a pretty good mix of people that I hope will determine fair boundaries so that we don't have people complaining about, how it was fixed in a certain way, which has been done in the past. So let's pray for a good boundary process.
Amen to that. And we know who to blame. We can blame Sam.
Oh, that's true.
Whether you're happy or unhappy, you can always blame Sam.
He'll be an excellent part of the commission.
Absolutely. I just want to point out that yesterday was the 76th anniversary of the discovery of the Buchenwald concentration camps in Europe at the end of World War II. It's just another reminder that there is true evil in this world, and it's important for us to recognize evil for what it is, but also not cast everything as evil that isn't. And here in America, there's been a lot of divisiveness, particularly over the last 4 years. And I hope we all can come together as a nation and heal, because it's more important that we take care of one another than to try to find evil and evil intent when none was intended. I want to thank you, Ron and Laurie, for being here today. I want to thank the audience for tuning in each and every week to Montgomery County's hardest hitting political talk show. For 21 this week, I'm Casey Aiken.